Howdy, partner. I want to do like, I wonder if I can recreate the roof Korean pose. You know, the one that's. Get this off.
41 Korean businesses in South Central have been torched.
That's a good thumbnail. I actually don't want to blow my fucking head off on accident, so. So you might be under the assumption that after part 3 of the Medieval America video, I was done, at least for the time being, considering the last one I uploaded was over a year ago. That is not true. Probably get my fucking script up. That might be helpful. I am doing the Hollywood thing, where one thing is particularly successful and then I just keep making more of it and then nobody can stop me. Maybe a less than charitable explanation for what's going on here, but I thought it's been a year since I made my last Medieval America video, and it is by far my most successful video series on this channel. It also is something where I promised a project, and now people are asking me, where's the project? Which, fair enough. It generated a little more buzz than I originally thought it would. If you haven't watched those 3 videos, what the hell are you doing here? Because I'm going to just assume that you've watched the other 3, and if you haven't, you're going to be very confused. So I recommend at least watching part 3, because that holds a lot of the part 1 and part 2 go on a little longer than I would have liked, but part 3 is, I think, is a good video, well paced, pretty funny, if I do say so myself. Nonetheless, I'm not really going to give any TLDRs in this video. There are people who actually want this book, so I thought I thought you all deserved like a little update. There are some elements to the world that I didn't think through all that well before I made the actual video on it. So this video is more so update on what's going on with the book, and then stuff about world building that I want to change. So I have 25,000 words written, which is like a quarter of a usual manuscript, and that's what I've written over the past year. I'll probably end up deleting like 90% of it, and you might be looking at those numbers and wondering, who are you, George Martin? No, I am the opposite, because instead of writing, the reason why I've written so little of Medieval America is because I wrote 2 other full-length novels that are not related to Medieval America that I haven't made videos on, so nobody knows about. Maybe a bit of a marketing oversight on my end. One of the novels was a sequel to a different novel that I thought I was going to get published, that I've mentioned before, and I was not published in the end, even though the publishing company was, you know, I'm self-publishing that novel now, and then I wrote the sequel to that, is what I wrote at the start of 2024. And then after that, I wrote a fantasy novel based on the 30 Years' War with like pike and shot warfare. So yeah, I'm going to try and make Medieval America the next novel I commit to, but I cannot 100% assure that. Especially since this year I'm more so going to be focusing on publishing and also working on this channel. The reason I'm cutting 90% of what I have written is because originally I wanted to start with the main character's village getting Emmons fielded, or pick a fantasy book and whatever the first town is gets burned to the ground. And then having that guy be carted off to be a craftsman slave all the way west in the Catholic League. And then have the book be about like him finding his way home, and it was going to be a whole thing. The problem is that kind of forces me to start off my world building with a little bit of Ohio, but then mostly focus on the Catholics. Not that the Catholics are not interesting to me. I actually find the West pretty interesting, but that is a lot of the part that's being rebuilt. So it's kind of like, what I need to do is I kind of need to put like a curtain over the Mississippi while I tinker with stuff I tinker with stuff to the west of it, and then I have the story take place to the east of it, which is a lot better developed. Right?
Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
So as a result, I kind of have to rework my story from the ground up, and I'm getting rid of these glasses because it's a pain in the ass. I kind of have to rework my story from the ground up, and I'd also like to alter the historical comparison that I'm making, because before, what I wanted to do with this book was just replicate the story of Henry the Fowler, kind of, a little bit. I wanted to take a lot of influence from it. Speaking of Henry the Fowler, I made a video about Henry the Fowler 2 weeks ago, and nobody watched it. And while I have the setup for the Henry the Fowler situation, I think treating the Ninkar like an apocalyptic Genghis Khan type situation has kind of undermined that historical reference a bit. I also wanted to capture some elements from the post-Hohenstaufen interregnum period of the Holy Roman Empire. So I need to go back and rework the overall direction of the actual story. I just wrote a novel that follows the rise to power of an exiled noble. So I might want to focus on a different kind of character or a different kind of progress. The 30 Years War novel I wrote was very, very war and battle heavy. Don't get me wrong. Love me wars, love me battles, simple as. But yeah, it was very battle heavy, very Machiavellian. So I've been thinking that this book would be more interesting if it was a sort of administration-based progress. All those like shitty isekai anime where like bureaucracy is the power system, but not really. But I could make it sort of a thing where the main character is like the son of a minor count or something that has lived his entire life fighting in like Appalachia, because you know that's what you do when you're a young guy. And then when his dad kicks the bucket, he has to go back and actually learn how to do politics. So I think that could be an interesting angle to take it, though I don't know if it would be as relatable as like someone who's lived their entire life by diplomacy, being forced to be proactive about like fighting a war. So I could take it the other way, but I think the former version is more interesting intellectually to me, so I might run with that. All that said, I've already begun work on altering the stage I set just a bit. The first element I want to impress upon you is a nuance to the Great Lakes or Ohioan Empire. That being the divide between the actual Great Lakes region and the area based more around the Ohio River Valley. I figure between these two regions, the dynamics of the empire can change quite a bit depending on whether the Great Lakes are in charge or if the Ohio River area is in charge. Since my bias leans towards my own home, I'm more inclined towards the River Valley South more than the Great Lakes North. So I want for things to eventually lead to a southern dominance over the empire, especially since the South is home to a culture that's more hospitable to a warrior class, since they do live on the border with the Ninkar and the Appalachians, so they would be doing a lot more fighting. And, you know, frontier peoples usually end up being the ones to win the civil wars. Meanwhile, the North is more of a merchant priest class dominated area. I had originally placed the capital of the empire in Cairo, Illinois, since it's a pretty advantageous location for trade, since it's right on the connection between the Ohio River and the Mississippi River. I think having Cairo be sort of a symbolic capital for both the Ohioan Empire and the Southerners kind of works, because it allows both empires to fight over it without having to go through too much of Appalachia. But I think the last ruling dynasty before we start the book should probably be based in the north. Far from the most immediate issues plaguing the Ohioans. I figure that if I saw a dynasty that lived on the edge with the barbarians, I would not imagine them being all that decadent. Whereas if they lived in like Ontario, far from the Mississippi River, there might be a little more, well, maybe we can just print money. After the fall of that dynasty, I think power starts to move southward, leaving the Great Lakes to be fairly disunited, kind of like northern Germany almost. The interregnum that follows will be a three-body problem of three main families constantly fighting for power. I want one to be based out of southern Illinois and around Cairo that has more direct connection to the Mississippi River to the Southern Empire. I would like for one to be based around like East Pennsylvania that has strong ties with Appalachia and the Potomac region, and maybe one further north set against the frontier with an Inkar in like Wisconsin or something. And of course the main character will be based out of Ohio, because why wouldn't I? That kind of brings me to another element, in that the area kind of around like the Chesapeake Bay with like DC, Philadelphia, that kind of area, the mid-Atlantic, is kind of up for grabs. On a lot of my maps in previous videos, I just handed it off to Appalachia so I could give them some ocean access. But I think this area is too symbolically important to just hand off to Appalachia, and for the other empires to kind of ignore. So I'm going to form it into kind of a papal state, for the religion based around having the founding fathers as gods, which I will probably make a video about at some point when I actually build the religion, which still needs to happen. Next thing I want to make a quick change to is with the Mormons. I think they need to be remapped a little bit, not just onto the Colorado River and Salt Lake, but also around like the Snake River and Utah Valley. I also neglected to realize that being in the area they're in, the unique flavor I gave the Mormons can kind of be explained away with a lot of mixing with like pastoralist cultures that storm into the civilized areas, create their own dynasties, and then eventually assimilate, like a lot of the like what happens a lot of the time in like Mesopotamia. And that could add like more of a warrior flair to the irrigation culture. Similarly, I want to base the Catholics more around the Southwest desert regions. One thing I really overlooked while I was making my original version of this world was the potential for the desert to become a trade highway over land between California and the rest of the continent, kind of like the Silk Road. Not to mention a lot of cool Pueblo architecture down there that I kind of want to aesthetically rip off. So I want to alter their vibe a little bit to focus more on like massive fort cities carved into like big desert rock formations that act as checkpoints along this like really wealthy trade highway. This also helps explain the Mormon Crusade from a more secular standpoint, as there's a promise of immense wealth here, in addition to the religious motivation. The last major thing I want to rework is the West Coast. I got a little bit ahead of myself with the dunking on California, so much so that I kind of completely forgot that there's this giant fertile valley that goes through the middle of California and that's attached to the San Francisco Bay. Because California has so many geographical blessings, I'd be kind of remiss to not, make California its own thing, right? I still want to keep the like sort of hollow, dead in the eyes, approval seeking, like clout oriented culture, and make it an empire more or less run by bureaucrats, where its expansion is hindered by its own dysfunctional cultural technology. But I want to separate California from the rest of the West Coast, because I think Cascadia has the potential to be something a little more interesting. I want to make Cascadia more into a warrior merchant society to juxtapose the bureaucrat priest society that is California. Oregon would most likely be a battleground between the two, with Cascadia being centered on like the Seattle, Vancouver area and extending up the Pacific coast all the way through British Columbia into Alaska, where more warrior influence might come from. I think this will make the West more interesting to write about, since there's actually like a political axiom in the region. But yeah, that basically sums up the changes, the like physical changes I'm making to the world. I also want to start expanding into Canada and into Mexico a little bit. I kind of have to read more about Mexico, and like, if the government just collapsed, how much would the cartels play in forming new nations? How much would like, where are the cultural divides, etc., etc. But yeah, sorry for the short video. I just wanted to do a little update, but I think I will be making some more medieval America content as I'm writing this book. I also want to start getting into what's going on in South America and whatnot. Maybe a little bit into Europe, I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, I have to do the research to find what's interesting about all these places that I could like shove into a medieval setting, right? I also these videos, I want to make a little more about like the nitty gritty of world building and the different societies, the different religions, etc. Less of a like wide scale thing where the video takes like an hour, and more like a 20-minute like, who knows, maybe they'll end up being an hour, but yeah, just more focused videos. But yeah, let me know if you're interested in that. I will see you guys next time, either with Otto the Great. I was expecting the Henry the Fowler video to do a little better, so I'm still gonna make the Otto the Great video, but I might throw in a like either another world building video or like some other kind of video before that. Yeah, I will see you guys next time. Go! Get out of here! Get out of here!